Hey you all, Carpetbagger here, coming to you live from St. Joseph, Missouri. I'm here in front of the state prison, but I'm not here to visit the state prison. This used to be a mental health facility, a asylum, if you will, and during that time there was a worker by the name of George Glore, and him, along with some of the patients there, developed a museum of mental health treatments, archaic mental health treatments, kind of show the history of mental health, how far it had come, how cruel it had once been, and the museum itself expanded. So eventually the asylum was shut down and converted to a prison, and the museum was moved next door here to what is now called the Glore Psychiatric Museum, and it will chronicle the history of mental health treatment. I've heard very good things that this is going to be a very fascinating museum, so please follow me. Oh wow, this is a restraint cage. You can see it's not necessarily a very comfortable way to restrain someone, putting them in a metal casket. Here's a client cannot refuse stamp. That reminds me almost of that Simpsons episode where they would stamp insane on your hand when you went to the mental institution. Who do you think should be responsible to take care of the mentally ill? 2 people said it's the individual. 2 people said family and friends. 4 people said the community. About the same said the state government. It looks like most people think the federal government. This is an exhibit on pica, which is basically eating things that aren't food. And check this out. This was found in a patient's stomach who died, a mental patient. And all these things were found in her stomach at the time of her death. I guess probably leading to her death. You can see all these nails, bolts, buttons, safety pins, rocks, earrings. Look at, like, this is even, I mean, it's kind of gross, but it's like, you could see like bile and stuff piled up there. Like they just like pulled this out, laid this on the thing. Just needles, just swallowing needles. That is just think about eating all those. This is really fascinating. A patient was seen putting letters in the back of their TV. And so an electrician sees the TV and found that there was all these letters that the patient was putting, almost like a diary of things that were going on, and it did record some of their delusions. Apparently the letters said that the hospital was storing their thoughts in some train cars back behind the hospital. But yeah, they didn't know. I guess it's unclear if they thought that their letters were going somewhere or if this was just a storage device. Yeah, here's some of the letters that are absolutely haunting, and see what it says here. It says the 2 Great Western boxcars, numbers 17820, Great Western boxcar number 38520 has all I know in them. Here's a bullet that was removed from a patient's leg 52 years after it had been shot into their leg by a man who he was having an affair with his wife. Here is a collection of 100,000 cigarette packs. You can see they're all different brands. A mental patient was under the understanding that if he could save 100,000 cigarette packs, he could exchange them for a new wheelchair. But of course, this was just a delusion. There was no such thing being offered. But the hospital administration felt so bad that they actually allowed him to turn these in for a new wheelchair. Apparently the same man that was collecting the cigarette packs also hoarded neckties. There's a seclusion room. You can see they're putting a straitjacket in here. Very, very sad. History of psychiatry timeline. All started in 1790 when the straitjacket was invented. 1848, Phineas Gage becomes a worldwide celebrity for having a metal rod blown through his head. 1906, Pavlov does weird experiments on dogs. This is the tranquilizer chair. It was created by Benjamin Rush, who's known as the father of psychiatry in the United States. This was designed to help calm down mental patients who are getting out of hand. Of course, nothing helps calm someone down more than strapping and shackling them into a chair and putting a box on their head. You can see it even has a area where they can defecate and pee so they don't have to be removed from the chair. So yeah, father of modern psychiatry. Here's some bloodletting supplies, some knives to cut people open and a bowl to collect the blood in. I always like these too, these fancy leech jars. Just like makes leeches seem so elegant. I'm starting to have questions about some of these early psychiatric treatments. This is the O'Harlan swing, and it was used for patients that were uncooperative, and kind of how it worked is they were placed in here, strapped into the box, and then just spun into a circle to cause distress upon them. I don't know why you would want to further distress someone who is already in a bad state, but essentially it was a really bizarre punishment. They just used the centrifugal force to, it says, rush blood to their brain. Wow, that's wonderful. Here's some wonderful displays featuring some child's dolls. This is the water dousing, where the psychiatrist would just pour water on you while you were tied up. This would help take someone who is out of it and knock them into their senses. It seems kind of mean. They actually use bloodletting as a treatment for mental health. I guess they would try to bleed out your crazy by strapping you down and slitting your ankle. Some 16th and 1700s restraining devices. Basically, I guess they would just put you in a big sack and leave you in a cell. And here we have a treatment where they would literally just stomp on you and step on you. I guess this was back when they thought that demonic presence could cause mental illness. So they would just put you on the ground and give you a good stomping, hoping that would get rid of the demon. Here's the practice of just using dungeons to lock away the mentally ill back in the 18th century. Oh wow, these poor insane women. Yeah, these restraining cages are like super cruel. Of course, you can tie this into like the witch hunt crazes. You can see a woman here getting ready to be burned at the stake. This is called a lunatic box, where you put the mentally ill person inside and they just have to stand there with only just their face poking out. But of course, if you get tired of looking at their mentally ill face, you can just drop that and they are just essentially in a standing coffin. It's called the bath of surprise. So someone would be standing up here unaware, trap door would open and just drop them into a pool of cold water, and supposedly that sudden shock would end their delusions. So you like get dunked in the water and you're like, oh, thank gosh, now I'm not crazy anymore. Okay, and this is the hollow wheel, where a patient would be placed inside, and apparently the idea was they had to remain completely motionless or the wheel would start to spin and they'd be forced to be trapped in there running like a giant hamster. They'd be locked in there for 48 hours, and this was supposed to help snap them out of their delusions. It seems like a lot of these treatments would actually cause further mental illness through PTSD. More of the practice of dousing, where this guy's just blasting this guy with a hose. It's a lot of these treatments are suspiciously like torture. Of course, the classic stocks. Of course, good old phrenology, where your character was determined by the bumps on your head. Some exhibit on restraints. You can see simple as just tying someone to a chair. Also, these were some restraints that were actually used. You can see the woman has her arms tied in that pouch in front of her. Here's some modern tranquilizers, things that would be used to help calm people down. And here's some early tranquilizers, which are just sticks and whips meant to bludgeon and beat people with, which I guess you just beat them until they're nearly unconscious. Doesn't seem great. This reminds me of the dentist's office from Little Shop of Horrors. Hydrotherapy, maybe a little different than what we call hydrotherapy today. This one is where they just wrap you in a wet blanket and tie you up, or lock you in a bathtub with only your head exposed, and subject you to hot and cold water. You know, look at this, an enema table where you laid on that, and then the doctors had full access to your rear. It's an old toilet. I think the problem being that the poo would just fall on the floor. Some fever cabinets where they would lock you in a hot box with only your head sticking out. You can see in it, and there's just like, it's a stool, and that clamps around your neck, and you're subject to whatever temperatures they feel that you need to be subject to. Shock therapy, or electroconvulsive therapy. You can see a woman being hooked to that machine. I know this is still used today. I don't think it is used quite exactly the same way as it once was. Yeah, here's the electroconvulsive therapy machine. You can actually see the mouth guard there to keep you from biting your tongue. And these would hook to your temples. Ooh, trepidation, where you just take out a chunk of your skull to give your brain some more extra room to exist. People still do this today, thinking it helps them think better. Here's an early trepanation knife, and you can see they would carve holes in their skull. This is 500 AD brain surgery. Oh my gosh, can you imagine having chunks of your skull removed with that in 500 AD? And here's a much more sophisticated 1890 skull cracking instruments. And here's our man Phineas Gage. He had the tamping rod that I guess they used to pack down dynamite, was blown all the way through his head, and he lived and made a full recovery, although some say that he became angrier and more volatile in later life. Look at this quote right here. "Despite all my rage, I am still just Phineas Gage." It's a replica of Phineas Gage's injury, showing kind of where the tamping rod went in and out of his brain. And there's a replica of the tamping rod. So you can see it's really long and just flew through his head. It's crazy. I can't remember where it is offhand, but I know that his skull and the rod are actually on display at a museum somewhere, but it's a museum that doesn't allow photography or anything like that. If you remember where that is, leave a comment in the comment section. There's the Rorschach ink blot test. Why don't I run through these and see what I see in these ink blots? Okay, I see Mothman. That's a guy with a beard. Those are his eyes. Those are two people looking at each other, getting water out of a well. Mothman. Two snails kissing. Two half human, half rabbits bumping their rear ends together. Oh wow. These are two squirrels crawling up the side of a woman. Oh, what is that? That is these are human organs of some sort, or maybe not even human. They're organs. That is some guy with a devilfish for a head, and he's wearing a big long coat. It's not a guy because he's wearing a bra. This is very interesting. This embroidery was made by a mental patient that was hospitalized for over 30 years. Said that she did not speak, but she sewed these words together in a cabin sack by that bee. What's that? Not pouting, Wow, this is fascinating. It's like kind of a look into her mind. Let's talk about rocking chair hospitals. Apparently in the psychiatric hospitals in the mid 1900s, all the patients had to work. They had to do things to earn their keep. And then apparently if a patient was unable to work, they were expected to sit in a rocking chair all day long, rocking. They weren't allowed to get up. They weren't allowed to ask for anything. They had to sit there and rock. How sad. Here's a mid-20th century ward scene. You see the patients. That woman's in a straitjacket, just forced to sit in the rocking chairs all day and rock. It's the hospital's physical therapy room. You can see some of the different things they use. A treadmill, you know, that's nice and normal. This is a bit more concerning, this dunking tank. This is somewhat unexpected in here. Apparently there was a flood that affected a car factory here, so they donated some cars that were actually broke down to the Children's Psychiatric Hospital, and the children worked on them as an activity, and they're completely amazing. These are like customized cars made by child mental patients. Really cool to see how their creativity came out. This one's known as the Yellow Rose. Oh my gosh, look at this interior. It's like so fuzzy. It's the fuzziest car ever. This is amazing. This is like a piece of absolute art right here. Here's the other car called the Jukebox Hero. It's very interesting. The interior there. But look at this on the truck bed here. It says Jukebox Hero. You've got, is that Michael Jackson, Elvis, the Beatles up there, Kiss. Pretty impressive. Man. Now down this hallway they actually have some micro museums in this section, some different collections that don't exactly relate to the psychiatry aspect. There's a figure of York. He was actually the African-American slave that accompanied Lewis and Clark on their expedition. Here's their doll museum. In here, of course, we have Barbie up there. She is having a picnic with her man friend Ken. How does Barbie measure up? I guess this is like what Barbie would be looked like if she was a normal human being. Let's see how I measure up to Barbie. Barbie would be way taller than me and have a much thinner waist. It's not a doll, it's an action figure. Yes, they christened boy dolls as action figures like this. I think this is the first action figure, G.I. Joe. The originals all had that scar on their cheek as a sign of authenticity. And of course, He-Man. Just how big are your arms compared to He-Man's? Longer, but not as muscular. The fear of dolls or similar objects. They talk about the uncanny valley hypothesis, which basically is that things that are human characteristics but are decidedly not human create a feeling of dread in people. And here's the doll they use as an example. It's a good example. That's a good example of uncanny valley right there. I know appealing to children in museums is always important, but as part of their World War I exhibit, they just have a PlayStation controller, and they let you play a game called Battlefield 1. They have some voting booths set up, and they want you to write down what you think some American values are. Some different answers here. This one says, science, prosperity, the pursuit of happiness regardless of race, religion, disability, sex, or sexual orientation. American values: greed, money, simplicity, homogeny, and quote-unquote freedom. A profound sense of entitlement, getting something for nothing. You are not responsible. Selfishness, laziness, xenophobia. These are going pretty hard on America. We think we value liberty and justice for all, but if you look around you, you see that white, rich Christian lives are valued over all others. Ignorance and intolerance, unrealistic people, being kind and using manners, well, that's good. it's sad. It's sad that there's so many negative and partisan sentiments there. I love America. I love America. I think people of all political backgrounds, I think we have more in common than we'd like to think. I think all people, want the freedom to live our lives, to be able to seek out what we love, to be able to express ourselves in the way we want without the government or other people telling us what we can and can't do. Of course, we live in a nation of laws, and we are a nation with compassion for those that are less fortunate. I love America. I don't want to live anywhere else. What I'd like to see changed is I would like to see people talk to each other, talk to people you disagree with. If you find someone that you disagree with politically, why don't you sit down with them and find something that you do agree on and work backwards from there? Because in the end, we're all Americans. We all love America. They want to label people liberals, they want to label people conservatives. We're all Americans, and we all love this country, and we all want what's best for this country. We have different ideas on how to get there, but that doesn't mean we can't work together. Now, I will get off my soapbox. I apologize. Now, I noticed that their bathrooms are themed here, and this is the phobia themed bathroom. So they have a giant clown on the wall. It says, "Are you afraid of clowns? Well, I certainly hope not, because you just stepped into your nightmare because you're locked in a bathroom with a clown." All right, so that was the Glore Psychiatric Museum. I really was impressed by that museum. Very depressing in some ways, showing how mental health treatment just was essentially torture at one point. And they did some showings of how it had grown, how it had changed over time. Of course, mental health is still a serious issue that we are dealing with to this very day. And I do think it's very cool to have an open and honest view of psychiatry. I visited the Scientology Psychiatry Museum out in Los Angeles, a little bit skewed, and this does show kind of both sides. This doesn't pull any punches. It shows how bad it once was, and but it's a hopeful ending, a hopeful future that that we can still work towards better treatment of our mentally ill friends and family. I appreciate you guys joining me. If you'd like to see other museums I've been to, as well as roadside attractions, amusement parks, haunted houses, and other fun things, check the interactive map in the description. If you'd like to help support the channel, consider buying a t-shirt. Consider donating to Patreon. A $3 or more donation will get you a postcard once a month. But for now, this one's in the bag.